Good evening, everybody. It's your favorite aspiring classicist here, a wandering author, reminding you that we are all the authors of our own lives. As always, my message remains the same: spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. And today we're on Chapter 2 of Book 10, and we're going to start going over some theories of pleasure. Remember that in Book 10 overall, Aristotle's focus is on pleasure as a whole. So, and like he normally does, he wants to bring up like the commonly held views about pleasure, compare them to each other, discard like the extraneous stuff, and then he wants to be left through that examination with like a little kernel of truth, basically. So let's begin. That pleasure is the good was held by Eudoxus on the following grounds. He saw that all creatures, rational and irrational alike, seek to obtain it. But in every case, he argued, that which is desirable is good, and that which is most desirable is the best. Therefore, the fact that all creatures move in the direction of the same thing indicates that this thing is the supreme good, for all. But that which is good for all, and which all seek to obtain it, is the good. His arguments owed their acceptance, however, more to the excellence of his character than to their own merit. He had the reputation of being a man of exceptional temperance, and hence he was not suspected of upholding this view because he was a lover of pleasure, but people thought it must really be true. He also held that the goodness of pleasure was equally manifest from the converse. Pain is intrinsically an object of avoidance to all. Therefore, its opposite must be intrinsically an object of desire to all. Again, he argued that the thing is most desirable which we choose not as a means to or for the sake of something else. But such admittedly is pleasure. We never ask a man for what purpose he indulges in pleasure. We assume it to be desirable in itself. He also said that the addition of pleasure to any good, for instance, just or temperate conduct, makes the good more desirable, but only the good can enhance the good. Now, as for the last argument, it seems only to prove that pleasure is a good, and not that it is in any way better than any other good. For every good is more desirable when combined with some other good than in isolation. Yeah, and that makes sense. In fact, a similar argument is employed by Plato to refute the view that pleasure is the good. The life of pleasure, he urges, is more desirable in combination with intelligence than without it. But if pleasure combined with something else is better than pleasure alone, it is not the good, with a capital T. For the good is not rendered more desirable by the addition of anything to it. And it is clear that nothing else either will be the good if it becomes more desirable when combined with something good in itself. What thing is there, then, of this nature, which is obtainable by us? For it is something of this nature that we are in search of. Those, on the other hand, who deny that which all creatures seek to obtain is good, are surely talking nonsense. For what all think to be good, that we assert is good, and he that subverts our belief in the opinion of all mankind will hardly persuade us to believe his own either. If only the irrational creatures strove to obtain what is pleasant, there would have been some sense in this contention. But inasmuch as beings endowed with intelligence do so too, how can it be right? And perhaps even the lower animals possess an instinct superior to their own natures, which seeks to obtain the good, appropriate to their kind. Again, these thinkers' refutation of the argument from the converse appears equally unsound. They say, if pain is bad, it does not follow that therefore, that pleasure is good. For an evil can also be opposed to an evil, and to a thing that is neither good nor evil. A statement which is indeed sound enough, but which does not apply to the things in question. If both pleasure and pain were in the class of evils, both would also be of necessity things to be avoided. And if in the class of things neutral, neither ought to be avoided, or they ought to be avoided alike. But as it is, we see men avoid pain as evil, and choose pleasure as good. It is therefore as good and evil that they are opposed. Yeah. And so, Aristotle will continue building on this argument tomorrow when we get into chapter 3. But his general argument so far is that pleasure is something that every creature in the universe seeks to obtain, whether it's a rational creature or an irrational creature, and that this alone shows us that pleasure is at least a good, if not the good, with a capital T. And then he also mentions the theory put forth by Eudoxus that pain is opposed to pleasure, and because of this, pain is evil. And what is the opposite of pain? Pleasure. And what's the opposite of evil? Is the good. So, two major arguments in favor of the pleasure being the good. But we'll continue this tomorrow. What are y'all doing in order to inspire, uplift, and empower your local community today? Because this world isn't changing unless we all do our part. And you can count on me to do mine daily. Till next time, I love y'all.